in designer with your best friends. You don't wanna talk no more about it in the past tense. Hit me up my zone. I'm just talking comfort, shy. I ain't give you nothing, you can come for shy. I got plenty things you make a run for shy. Got an extra and eating life with my body. It's what you.
Hey y'all, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. Today I will be exploring some topics that are close to my heart and my lived experience as a Black woman. I will be hitting a lot of topics here, so try to stay with me. Disclaimer, real quick. I will be discussing things related to race as a social construct, and race theory. So if any of these topics are too sensitive for you, I understand if you need to click away. But all of these topics have been heavily researched already, and I will just be adding my own commentary based on my own opinions and research. And this is not to put down any other race, just to explore these concepts through the lens of a specific marginalized community, aka Black women. So the first topic that I want to speak on is intersectionality. So when we speak about the experiences of Black women, just know that it's always going to be multifaceted. So the theory of intersectionality states that the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discriminations or a disadvantage. This layering of dynamics means that it becomes its own kind of experience and not just a separation of identity. My favorite analogy for this is like color theory. So when you add two different colors together, it doesn't just become some swirl of colors, it becomes its own identity, its own color. While we do experience the same dynamics of Black people, we also face the discrimination that comes along with being a woman as well. We even have a term for that we coined misogynoir for these specific instances. So when Black women face misogyny, it becomes racialized as well. And even the subject of our gender can be seen as masculine, simply for the way that we look, but that's another topic. So the first time that I heard this term coined was in a linguistics class that I was taking. And when we came upon the topic of intersectionality, it really opened my eyes to the diversity of these experiences and the color that it really brings to how specific the discrimination becomes when it is layered like that. So when we're speaking about the specific experiences of these groups of people, it's important that we A, let these people speak for themselves, and B, take into account the multifaceted nature of the discrimination that they're talking about and what they're facing. So the next thing I want to talk about is the difference between feminism and womanism and how they are intrinsically different. Even though they do have similar goals, they don't come from the same place. So when we're speaking about feminism and women's rights as a whole, a lot of the times we're going to start with the women's suffrage movement. Unfortunately, the women's suffrage movement has a deeply racist past in which Black people were not only not considered, but actively left out of the conversation and deliberately barred from spaces of protest. So most of us are familiar with feminism and its history, but it doesn't always encompass the same objectives of women of minority groups or women in marginalized communities. The women's suffrage movement was never meant to include Black women, if we're just being honest. If we think about their basic objectives, it's honestly misaligned from the start. The women's suffrage movement wanted the right to vote at a time where Black people were not allowed to vote at all. In fact, there were Jim Crow laws and other laws passed that would inhibit the rights of people that even tried to vote. They also wanted the right to work when many Black women were already a part of the labor force and doing domestic labor, even if they weren't being paid for it at all. So the conversations of white feminism often uphold an agenda that caters to the perceived fragility of white women while actively suppressing the voices of those in marginalized groups. Womanism, on the other hand, is a term that was started by Black women specifically and upholds our divine connection to nature and spirituality, as well as helps us redefine feminism in a term that is innate to us. It is in and of itself an homage to Black women and our core beliefs in how we uphold our communities and pour back into them, as well as ourselves. So the next topic that I want to talk about is the hypersexualization of Black women, especially in the media. So the hypersexualization of young Black girls is pervasive and has had a universally crippling effect on girlhood. Whether it's from our own communities or outside, we often face sexual advances and sexual perceptions from a very young age. So this can be tied to this old stereotypes that are presented in the media, such as the Mammy, Jezebel, and Sapphire characters that present Black women as having a naturally high sexual appetite. So the caricatures of the Mammy, Jezebel, and Sapphire archetypes are as follows. The Mammy archetype is seen as a caregiver, an asexual being, or someone that is just there for the convenience of doing labor, whether that is emotional labor, physical labor, or what have you. The Mammy caricature can be seen within archetypes such as the magical Negro, or someone that is just always conveniently popping up to help the white protagonist, and can also be represented by characters such as Aunt Jemima, which we all know is the pancake syrup lady. The Jezebel, on the other hand, is a woman with a high sexual appetite. She is seen as very raunchy and feminine and will often go after or pursue or be pursued by the main character. And while this isn't inherently negative, I guess, it also puts Black women in a box as being something to be pursued solely for sexual purposes. The Sapphire archetype, on the other hand, is known as the sassy Black woman, and she's always going to be up in your face, loud, ghetto, and quote-unquote classless, which is also another stereotype that you'll find being portrayed by Black women. So not only do these media representations portray Black women as being hypersexual, but they also like to categorize and box us into a narrative that doesn't often fit us. Just like any other human being, Black women are not a monolith. We are diverse and have multiple different interests, and we don't all fit into the same box. Stereotypes like this are clearly harmful because they create preconceived notions of what a Black woman should be. So personally, I know that a lot of Black women can relate to the topic of hypersexualization within their girlhood, especially when it comes to the negative perception of being quote-unquote fast. This could be anything from wearing a red lipstick, wearing a skirt that's way too short, or just anything that is seen to mature you and make you seem to be mature beyond your years or trying to act grown. Of course, harboring these ideas within the Black community can be extremely harmful. Regardless of their actions or the perceptions of others, Black women and girls still need to be protected just like any other child, and shouldn't be seen as quote-unquote asking for it or making themselves available to the sexual advances of grown men. And that's all I got to say about that, so moving on. Another thing I want to talk about is the origins of the self-care movement within the Black Panther Party. The self-care movement has become something that is popularized in the media today as a way to pour into yourself while also maintaining your femininity. This was a principle of the Black Panther Party because they recognize that Black women often uphold their communities and do not get the same care back that they pour in. So within the self-care community, we prioritize your own mental health, your own mental well-being, and taking care of yourself. This and combating representations of Black women as being masculine could be why a lot of Black women feel the need to be hyper feminine or put their femininity on display as a performance. And it can sometimes be seen as a defense mechanism to protect against these portrayals. Moving on to the social contributions of Black women. Black women are constantly and systemically being left out of the conversation of cultural progress, and yet we are the blueprint. And I may be biased, but it's true. Whether it's advancements in art, culture, or technology, somehow everyone gets to enjoy the contributions as a whole without due individual respect. Cultural appropriation, for example, is when Black people are judged and discriminated against for the way we decided to wear our hair, and people outside of our culture continue to use our looks as a performance to appear hip or cool. And I'm talking about you, K-pop idols. When we're talking about AAVE, what used to be called Ebonics is now termed as AAE, or more popularly known before as AAVE. We removed the word vernacular because it's not a slang, it is its own language. It is African American English. Much of the Gen Z language can be attributed to Black trans women, another group in society deemed faceless. Phrases like, what's the tea, or you ate that, or even, yes, queen, that are oftentimes made to be a part of mainstream popular culture are actually gay slang and AAEs. We use terms like this to differentiate our use of language from standard American English. Oftentimes, when Black people use this form of language, it is demonized and criticized and seen as unprofessional. But it is unfortunately accepted into mainstream media for the use of performance. For us, the use of code switching between standard American English and African American English becomes like this performance art of acceptability politics for Black people as we try to make room for ourselves within society. It might be cool to use these terms amongst your friends, but for some of us, the use of AAE could mean the denial of opportunities or a prejudgment of your character and worth. In other words, we use code switching to recognize each other and protect ourselves from our oppressors. In the same vein as cultural appropriation of language of Black people, we also face the same challenges with our hair. Black women like Madam C.J. Walker popularized hair care for Black women at a time where there were no products that catered to Black people's needs. Madam CJ is actually credited with becoming the first female millionaire in the Guinness Book of World Records. But how we maintain our hair continues to be the subject of criticism and debate, and even has ties as far back as African empires and the transatlantic slave trade. Our braided hairstyles were laced with seeds, grain, and intricately woven patterns that helped guide enslaved people to freedom. Hairstyles like braids, locks, and twists are incredibly complex, and it can take hours and even days to form, which is only part of the reason that Black women don't want you touching their hair. Black people in general have had issues in the workplace when it comes to caring for and maintaining our hair. This includes the discrimination for how it's kept. In our culture, there are hairstyles that are intrinsic to our identities and should not be the subject of scrutiny. For example, Zendaya's red carpet appearance in 2015 was heavily criticized at first in the media, with one reporter even making the remark that she probably smells like marijuana and patchouli oil. This actually led to the passing of a piece of legislature aptly dubbed the Crown Act that prohibits employers and places of businesses from discriminating against people on the basis of how they wear their hair. While this has not been officially adopted everywhere, it is a step in the right direction. Black women are no stranger to high achievement either. We are actually among the fastest growing educated demographic in America, and we even have a little inside joke that we collect degrees like it's a hobby. Even with the disparity in resources available to us, we still somehow overcome these obstacles. In conclusion, Black women face specific and layered barriers in society, and yet we still find ways to thrive. When you think of the richness of popular culture, keep in mind the invisible faces that have given way to these experiences. Although there are systemic attempts to dehumanize and erase our experiences, we still find ways to break barriers and surpass expectations. To be a Black woman is to be a part of society that upholds its community and nurtures the richness of creativity and vulnerability. We are truly remarkable, and they mad they can't take that away from us. Big mad.